Good afternoon and welcome. I am Rose October with about arts, culture, and things in between this Sunday again. Thank you for joining us. As normal, my normal on Sundays for the past few Sundays, I have been bringing this program to you, arts, culture, and things in between. And one of the things I do in the beginning, in addition to welcoming you and telling you thank you for joining, is tell you a little bit about the program. So Arts, Culture, and Things in Between is a program that features individuals who are gatekeepers of our arts and culture. They are not only performing artists, but also teachers, advocates, and scholars who focus on the preservation of the arts and culture. When I mention art, I'm referring to the different art forms that include visual, applied, or performing arts. For visual arts, we can look at painting, sculpture, photography, film. For applied arts, we can look at architecture, as in the designing or constructing of building something, a project. Fashion design comes under applied arts, where the fashion designer works with different types of patterns and fabrics. Jewelry design is also under applied arts, where the jewelry designer works with materials such as wood, plastic, metal, silver, gold, and various types of stones. Furniture designer comes under applied arts, and I have a smile on my face if I say furniture designer, and you'll know why later on. And the furniture designer could be working with various types of woods. He or she would look at the ways that woods are cut and designed and create wonderful pieces. And I'm giving you a hint, like we will see this afternoon. When we look at performing arts, we're looking at theater, opera, drama, singing, comedy, music, and of course, dance. The other part of arts, culture, and things in between that I want to focus on right now is culture. When culture is mentioned, it generally means the way of life for a particular group of people. So for this program, it is inclusive to mean the various groups of individuals that embrace the way of life, looking at attitudes and behaviors. What is important to note is that as culture is mentioned, I am really looking at how practices are passed from one generation to the other. The things in between gives me a lot of maneuverability to do other things in addition to arts and culture. And the things in between are life issues that affect the execution of the arts and cultural practices. And this could involve both positive and negative experiences that become a part of the creative process. So, my guest today is a furniture craftsman, and he is excellent at what he does. He gives a lot of credit, if not all of the credit, to his parents for his gift. Let's take a quick look at his father's work, whose footsteps he has followed in the arts, and then we will meet him. Let's watch. Thank you. So that was a quick tease. Some of you might have recognized a person in one of those pictures, but what we've seen are two pieces of the renowned Donald Locke. Donald Locke is the father of my guest today, Jonathan Locke. Jonathan Locke is a gifted entrepreneurial furniture craftsman who uses his hands to craft wood. He has his roots in Guyana and gives credits to his parents for his interest and nurturing of his talent. His parents, Donald and Leila Locke, were both highly regarded artists whose work have been seen, have been shown in private collections and at museums both in his home country, Guyana, and around the world. As a child growing up in Guyana, Jonathan loved making things with his hands. This started with the use of pieces of wood and old wooden pallets to build small projects, which he built wooden scooters and even a table tennis table. As a teenager, his curiosity was piqued after visiting the home of John Makepeace in England, who is a world-famous furniture maker known for unique creations, and these creations fascinated Jonathan. In 1982, Jonathan migrated from Guyana to the United Kingdom, and then in 1985, he left the United Kingdom for the United States. From 1986 to 1987, Jonathan attended Leeds Designs workshop, in Massachusetts, where he specialized in furniture making. Following this, he landed his first professional job as a junior furniture maker with a world-famous designer, Dakota Jackson, who was known for making very complex Art Deco furniture. Within 3 years of working with Dakota, Jonathan became Dakota's top furniture builder and did most of Dakota's prototypes that involved resolving very complex concepts. After 5 years of working with Dakota, Jonathan was pushed to realize his dream of having his own work studio, Tamari Studios. He decided to take his developed skills honed along the journey and fulfilled his dream. In a short time, he had a number of clients who were ordering custom-made furniture pieces. Early in his career, Jonathan learned that coupling integrity with his knowledge and skills will serve him well, and his clients respected him for his work ethics. As a result of his dedicated self-application to his craft, one of his clients offered him a teaching position at Parsons School of Design in New York City, where he spent more than a decade as a part-time faculty lecturer. Jonathan prides himself for his entrepreneurship of Tamari Studios for 29 years until 2019. His New York-based studio employed many skilled and unskilled craftsmen. One of his passions is grooming others to help them better themselves in the process of furniture craftsmanship. He has traveled to Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, his homeland, where he taught woodworkers how to advance their level of skills to improve their craftsmanship. In the last year, Jonathan has been offered yet another position by one of his previous clients. This time, he is managing the company's window treatment production operation. This position allows him to use his creative skills in working with wood and metal, and he designs new systems for high-end room dividers and curtain systems. As a contributor to the upliftment of his community, Jonathan conducts auctions at events, along with finding the time to contribute to his alma mater through his membership of the Bishop's High School Alumni Association of New York. In addition, he volunteers his time for planning events and moderating town hall meetings held at the Consulate General of Guyana in New York. A prideful moment in his career is when Jonathan created a replica of Guyana's coat of arms. This replica, made of exotic veneers from around the world, was presented to the President of Guyana in 2018 in honor of Guyana's 50th independence anniversary celebration. In 2018, Jonathan conceptualized handmade wooden statuettes, which he co-sponsored and donated to the Guyana Cultural Association Awards Committee. So, to his credit, Jonathan's work has been around our community. He's been featured in books, magazines like Architectural Digest and BET magazines, and newspapers, namely New York Times. Highlights of his career includes the receipt of awards from the American Institute of Architects for craftsmanship twice, the International Contemporary Furniture Fair, and the Guyana Cultural Association. So, for those of you joining, we can all conclude that my guest today, the well-decorated furniture craftsman, if he chooses to retire, it's all good. He's done a lot plus some. So to those of you joining me today, I present to you the one and only Jonathan Locke. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hi, Rose. Hi.
Impressive bio. And I know there are some things that have been left off.
Well, that introduction, I tell you what, I'm looking behind me to see who you're talking about.
I'm talking about you.
Rose, the truth is, I want to say thank you for having me on your show. You know, it is really important to me that people learn about what other people are doing. I think too many times we go around in this world, particularly Guyanese, we've been told to kind of stay in your lane, sort of. And I think it's important that we step out so that other people see what's possible. You know, we've had Barack Obama as president, and you know, before that, you know, it was always kind of like a dream that that's possible. You know, and I think it's important that we each let people know that, you know what, there's all kinds of things that are possible. And in my case, I know that I stepped out from becoming, let's say, an accountant or something like that, which thankfully I did, because I wouldn't have been too good at it. But it's been quite a journey, a lot of fun, a lot of stuff going on there, and the journey still goes on, actually. So
let me ask you this: you credit your parents for your gift of craftsmanship, and I know you are very religious. You thank God also. And we just saw a slide before I introduced your bio of a couple of pieces.
yes.
Your father, Donald Locke, who is a renowned artist. Tell us how your parents nurtured your gift.
Oh, well, for one thing, you know, it only occurred to me, and while maybe in the last 15 years or so, that going to Bishop's High School in Guyana, you know, I was expected, I mean, the typical path is something more on the academic level side. But fortunately, both parents being artists, they did not, I didn't realize it at the time, but they let me kind of do what I wanted to do, just to, you know, I wasn't the most academic kind of person because I was constantly doing things with my hands, constantly figuring out and making things. And they allowed me the space to do it. It wasn't just that, but because they were artists, you know, my childhood was spent around what they did. Um, I remember Easter time. I was always making things, making kites and things like that. And a famous moment with making kites, to give you an idea of them nurturing me, is to think outside the box. I would always enter kite flying competitions. And one time, the rain was falling, and all the kites, everyone, when the rain falls, the kites are made out of paper or cellophane. You got to bring them down. You can't fly it in the rain. And my mother said, "Why don't you make it out of cloth?" Actually, part of it was I don't think I had any more paper left. And I couldn't go and buy any more paper. Maybe I didn't have any money. I don't remember that detail. But we made the kite out of cloth. My kite was the only kite up in the air, you know. And so, with that kind of thinking outside the box, it allowed me to play around with the things that I loved. And I remember even as a little kid, maybe 4 or 5 years old, getting my first woodworking set. It's a toy set. I can still picture the saw. It had a brown plastic handle, and that's me and Kitty in Georgetown, and cutting wood up or whatever I was doing. So they definitely, I got tools from my grandfather, who turns out was a very, very skilled furniture maker as well. But I never met him, or at least I think he died before I was born. But
Let me ask
they,
you,
yeah,
just for those who don't know who your parents are, and especially who your dad is, you mentioned that they were artists. Could you
yes,
talk a little bit to their line of artistry?
okay.
And
Well, so one of the fun things growing up as a kid in Guyana, growing up in Kitty, which is right against the seawall, my father, as an artist, he was quite ahead of his time. And so we would go walking for walks on the seawall, and this was regularly. And he would pick up driftwood. He would pick up parts. Now, this was the weird part. He'd pick up parts of dolls that washed up on the beach, torsos, limbs. He never picked up heads. And we literally had, I remember we had 2 sacks full of these things. And if you see some of it, as a matter of fact, you just saw the piece, that blue piece of sculpture was a woman's figure. And that evolved from those parts that he was so focused on. But we would be with him going around, I certainly was, and it was really interesting to be part of this process. With my mother, she did a lot of, she worked in acrylic, did a lot of paintings. And she would go around in the gardens. She would go, one of our more well-known music teachers, Edith Peters, she did the portrait of her. And I remember going with her every day to watch her paint. I could still picture myself in the living room of this music. She was very, very special in the music community in Guyana. But apart from that, my mother became a ceramic specialist, and I was very integral in the part of the processing of ceramic work for her. As a kid, I would help. She prepared clay bodies, meaning the clay to make tiles, which made the swimming pool for the president of Guyana, which still stands today. And when I was in high school, I would go to help to create these tiles. And while I was supposed to be studying for school, I was controlling the temperature and the kilns for the tiles. So it was always in me to do something like this. I never thought I would end up doing it, but that was my childhood, really.
so, what pulled you to furniture making,
Ah,
furniture craftsmanship? What pulled you? Because you're talking about your parents' artistry going their own way. Somewhere
right.
along the line, you realize that you are unique in your own ways.
Well,
And
I can tell you, my father was really special to me, very, very special. And one of the things, because he was the art master at Queen's College for a number of years, and the art master is a very, very special person. Well, any teacher at Queen's College was very unique character. Each one had their own personality. But one of the things my father would do, he was a real man of the people, really. And we sometimes at night I would go with him back to the school for whatever reason, and we would play cards with the security guards there. He was really a people person. But the other thing he would do was take me to the Guyana forestry. This is the place where all the timber was produced in Guyana was exported. And this is down in Kingston. And they had a joinery shop, a furniture making shop. And he would take me there and he'd go and visit the guys. And I always remember you take a bottle of rum for them, you know. But I would go around this and I could remember the smell of the wood and watch Mr. Prince, who was the main foreman at the time, you know, watch them working and producing amazing stuff. And that built an excitement in me. I do remember that most of them seem to have like a digit missing. And you can see here, I've got them all. They've been on for a long time. But when I was about 16 or so, I was always messing around with wood. And Jackie Jackson, who was like my aunt, stepmother, very close friend, family friend, the wife of the former Foreign Affairs Minister, Rashley Jackson, she said, you know, Jono, why don't you become a furniture designer? And I kid you not, I didn't know what she meant. Now, I said, what do you want me to be a carpenter? I'm going to Bishop's High School. I'm going to be a carpenter. And she said, no, furniture designer. Anyway, I ended up going to England on holiday. And that's where, as you said in my intro, my grandparents, my English grandparents lived near this famous furniture maker. They took me there and he had this famous woodworking school there. So I was able to see exhibits of his work because he lived in the building with the school. It was like a mansion. And he had like a chest of drawers in his bedroom. It was like a museum you could go into. And the chest of drawers had the drawers that opened, beautiful drawers, but the chest of drawers was in the middle of the room. And if you walked around the back, you noticed the drawers again, the same drawers. These drawers traveled right from the front. You could push them and open them from both sides. I'd never seen or heard of anything like that. And then there was this dining table, a huge circular dining table made out of this exotic wood. And it was just a big slab of wood with a wooden base underneath. And if you saw it, you're like, what the hell? You never see this stuff. In Guyana, we did very traditional stuff. So this was so eye-opening to me. I could hardly sleep the night after I saw this stuff. But I knew that day, I mean, I can pinpoint that day was the day that locked me in, without a doubt, without a doubt.
How many years you've been doing this? I know you'll be dating yourself right now, and some you could say, well, in excess of 4 decades, or in excess of 5 decades, if you don't want to.
Well, I've been doing it since I was early teens, because I'll tell you, in the forestry, when my father left Guyana, we were living in South Rheinveld Gardens, and I would go down to the forestry and buy wood. Now, this is a young teen, 13, 14, 15, somewhere around that, and buy wood. And this was the fun part as a kid, okay? You know, to move wood was on horse carts. That's how you would move wood around. But as a small boy, you want to, I don't know if you know, a small boy's fun is jumping on the back of a horse cart and getting a free ride. And the guy yelling at you, right? Say, get off the back of my cart, you know? But when I go to buy the wood, I pay the guy to deliver the wood for me. So I get officially to go on the horse cart from Kingston to South Rheinveld with this wood. Oh, it was the greatest thing. He could never yell at me because I'm paying him, you know? And I made a bed for my sister. I made a sofa for the living room. I made a kitchen in the house. And I couldn't have been, maybe I was 15. If they're very primitive looking, I will admit, but they stood up for years. You know, it may still even be there now, I don't know. But so I've been doing it, you know, so that may 40 something years, I guess. Wow. Yeah, something like that.
Somebody's lifetime.
Yes. Yeah.
Lifetime. Wow. Wow. So thank you for that, Jonathan. So for those of you who are joining, thank you. You're in with us on Arts, Culture, and Things in Between. My guest today is the one and only Jonathan Locke, who is a furniture craftsman. So let's really soak in some of this knowledge that we'll gain from him today about what he does. Let's take a quick break, Jonathan, and show a little bit of your work, and then come back and talk some more. Wow. I recognize some of those pieces as being in magazines, Jonathan.
Yes, yes,
Yes. Um, I liked, and I'm going to show my ignorance there. I like the table with the
yes.
nice legs. What do you call those nice legs? My nice legs are my description. My description.
I once had a customer say, I like that table you make. I want you to make one just like that for me, but I want a nice one. I'm
Okay,
like,
there you go.
I don't know where you go with the what, because I have to be more. You have to be more specific when you want something, rather than the word nice. But are you talking about the large turned bases?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So that was one of the more special pieces I did. Those are huge, solid chunks of wood that were turned on a lathe to create that spherical shape. And then on the top, it's veneer work, which was really what I eventually specialized in. So it's marquetry on the top with a big diamond type pattern with a border around working with veneers.
I swear. So, like exposure to your dad, you have been connected with some greats like John Makepeace in England and
Yes,
Walter Jackson in the United States here.
yes.
Your fascination with these men's work also sparked something in you to the point that you knew you had to become an entrepreneur in some ways. So, at different junctures of your life, how did Makepeace and Jackson make an impact on your career?
Well, the reality is that they just did stuff that was so different, so unique, so challenging. And I got to tell you that one of the things I did do, even during the last few years, I would go and do career day where I talk to students about what I did in high schools or in middle schools even. And what happens is they've never seen anybody do work with veneers. People come for career day as a fireman, as a policeman, as a doctor or whatever. So it was very exciting to show them this kind of stuff. But when I went to Bishop's High School, I learned, they gave me the best education that I could absorb. My brain was limited, but I ultimately ended up using the understanding of math, things like geometry and physics and chemistry, to understand what I was looking at when I looked at the furniture that these guys made. And I was like, wow, I see how this balances here and how this door could swing in such an unusual way, which is not typical of any door that you would ever see. And so that excited me. So my foundation of a good, solid high school education really made a difference for me to understand and realize how I could apply it to this thing that I really got excited about seeing and understanding how it was done. And so seeing their work made me realize that there's so much more you can do than just making a square box and putting a door on it, putting two shelves and saying it's a cupboard. So their work really inspired me from
I
that.
have two questions based on what you said. For those who don't know what veneers are, could you talk to them?
Sure. Yes. Thanks for asking that question, because I can hardly say I knew much what a veneer was. But ultimately, you think of plantain chips. If you got a Guyanese, whatever, a community here of people who know what plantain chips are, you have a plantain which is round and long, but then they slice it along the length into very thin slices. And then they fry that, and that's what you buy in a plastic bag. Well, just imagine a log being that plantain. And this machine comes along and slices it into very, very thin slices. And then those pieces, they're like pieces of paper, pieces of cardboard, but they're actually a thin sliver of the tree. And that's what a veneer is. So what I would go and buy is what's called a flitch, which is a large section of the tree, and they're all consecutive slices of this tree. It could be 32 in a bundle. You get about 32 to 60 slices, and they're so thin, they're maybe a 32nd of an inch thick, like the thickness, thinner than the thickness of a penny. And those pieces of wood, they're as wide as the tree is. Depends on how the factory cuts it. because depending on how you cut the tree, you get a different look. So because you're following you're seeing the grain of the wood when you slice it. And so you end up with these thin layers. And when it comes to marquetry and inlay work, you take those thin layers of veneer and you cut them into different shapes, and then you join them together carefully. And you know, it's very technical in a sense, but the basic thing is that you're cutting them into shapes using different woods and gluing them onto a thicker piece of wood, a substrate, a thicker piece of wood, and creating this panel that like a sheet of plywood. But you know, that's the basic concept of it.
So a follow-up question about veneer.
Yes.
You're saying that it's a thin piece of wood, layman terms.
Right. That's right.
Now, is it treated so that it's durable?
Yes and no. It's dried, but it tends to curl up, so it doesn't always stay perfectly flat. You know, wood does its own thing. So what happens when it curls up is, and it can be brittle as well. That's another complication. But you can actually spray it down sort of with water, and that will get it soft so that you can press it down and be flat. But actually, water that's a simple way of doing it, and that actually causes problems. But basically, we use a mixture of glycerin, which is, you'll find glycerin in even chewing gum. It makes it kind of, fibers become kind of spongy. So you mix glycerin with water and you spray the veneer down, and then it stays nice and flat. But it's again, that's a simplified version of it. But that's the process really of working with it. Some veneers are even more complicated to work with, some of the more exotic ones. If it's a more brittle veneer, if the grain is really curly and doing all kinds of crazy things. So sometimes you're working a project and it could take, you know, a day to do. Another time it could take several days because it's the choice of wood that the client may have requested or you may have chosen.
Do you advise clients on the types of veneers? And am I using that correctly? Types of veneers? Or
yes, yeah, that's correct. Yes. Typically, no. The world that I was in was custom furniture. That the client comes to me with a request, and they say, "I'd like this table made out of bubinga, or you know, words that we would know more like mahogany or maple or walnut," and but not just mahogany, but a flat cut mahogany. So it depends again how the wood is sliced. So if you just cut it like a typical plantain chips, that's called flat cut. But then if you cut it at certain angles, you could get very straight grains in it, and that's called a quarter-sawn cut. So the client would request certain things, and there are factories all around the world that produce these veneers. And but there are places. The beautiful thing about living in New York is you actually there are places right here in this place where we think of Wall Street and Broadway, but there are places right here that you can go and get more selections than most places around the world. You know, than around the country even, because I guess we've got a lot more clients in New York, so the wood has come to us, sort of, you know.
Okay, so I have one more question for clarification before I go to my other question. I said I did. So one more sub question. You mentioned bubinga.
Yes.
Is that the name of a veneer?
Yes.
Oh,
The bubinga is an African veneer. Yeah, it's kind of a reddish toned veneer. Yeah, it's the name of a tree, the name of a wood, a species of wood. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So the other question that I wanted to ask you about was regarding how your education played a role.
Yes.
You said that your exposure to the subject matter, and I'm guessing mostly math at Bishop's.
Yes.
Correct me.
A lot.
Really laid the foundation or helped you along the way, right?
Yes.
Now for parents watching,
yes,
who might have a child,
yes,
who is a mini
mm-hmm.
or a junior, Jonathan,
yes.
what would you say to that parent in advising him or her about how whatever the child is learning at school can help with
nurturing that child.
I can talk for 3 hours on that subject.
Oh,
Because it's a fun thing about when I went to these schools to talk to the students, because it didn't occur to me until I was actually in the profession that I was using chemistry, because I'm mixing glues to glue the wood down. And you have to understand the difference between, for example, spraying lacquer. You want to put the varnish on the wood, basically. And now they've made more environmentally friendly products, which are water-based. So it's not this chemical thing. And sometimes I'd hire a guy to spray the furniture for me, and he would go and mix the water-based version with the oil-based version. No, I think you would know too that you don't mix water and oil. They don't go well together, right? So that's as basic as it gets, but it gets even more technical because we use a lot of strong chemicals. So you have to appreciate the fact that acetone is not a good thing to be breathing in, you know. When I go to these schools, and it's been a while since I've been, that's disappointing to me. But one of the things I tell them is that I use, yes, math is considered like the main thing, but physics, understanding that, you know, this thickness of material is not going to support this tabletop. You know, this diameter of this leg or for the table is not strong enough to hold this table up. Or if you make a chair and you lean back on it, the two backs, the back of it needs to have a certain thickness, a certain ability to handle the weight. If you make a door of a cabinet and the door is, let's say, 12 inches tall, but is 4 feet wide, I think understanding the physics of the weight, and you put two little hinges here, you know, it's going to try to sag. And I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with architects and designers who come to me and say they want this. I said, well, I can do it, but I guarantee you, you'll be calling me back in a month and you're going to be thinking that I messed up because you've designed something that physically is impractical. So, in as much as I you know, the one subject that I told my teacher in high school, why do I want to learn this? Nobody in Guyana speaks Spanish. No, I'm now, and his words to me were, as God is my witness, you never know where you're going to end up in life. Every single day in New York, I could be speaking in Spanish to the guys who work with me every single day. And I've had problems because they've built something and they did it wrong because their ability to speak English wasn't great. My ability to speak Spanish wasn't great. Everything I learned in school, I use every single thing, even music, everything applies. I use it in my work. You know, I had a job to do, to restore a piano that was burnt in a fire. And my appreciation for being able to tune a piano, it made me realize that every aspect of what I'm doing is very sensitive. Is, you know, each piece of wood will flex differently than the next piece of wood, depending on the thickness and the length of it. And so the music became something like, I remember, you know, if you play a guitar, if you tighten the string too much, it gives a different sound, you know. So every single thing I did shows up in my work. And so the higher level that you take it to in school shows up in making furniture. When I would have thought having good hands and, you know, a place to buy wood and having a saw is all you need. No, I solve so many problems. Like right now, a conference table has curved sides, but the client says, I want the side to be curved, but to be curved like 3 inches sticking out in the curve. No, and it's 10 feet long. What curve is that? I don't know. I know the formula to calculate that radius. And if any of my classmates from high school are watching this, they'll be smiling because they'll remember that we use a formula using the height and the height of the arc and the width of the what do you call it? Now I'm forgetting the word, not the tangent, but ultimately, I didn't remember the specific formula, but I knew the formula. I went online, pulled up the formula. It's written on the side of my toolbox right now. It's been there for 20 years.
wow.
And
Wow.
that's from Bishop's High School.
Wow. Well, you know, I thought we needed to go there only because when we talk about the arts, many times parents might have another path for their child.
Right.
They themselves are not in the arts, or they don't have an appreciation for the arts. And what happens is that child is being steered away from. So I'm glad to hear that you've spent some time talking about the fact that your parents, who were not only artists, but they allowed you, to be liberal in your learning and in their teaching of what you can accomplish, and how you were able to also tie in the fact that most things learned at school, they're working for you in your adult life. I think that's really wonderful to be repeated, so that we are reminded that it's because of how we were raised and the impact of those individuals in our lives along the way really played a really important part in who we are today.
A funny sidebar to that, though, I'll tell you, is I remember when I was working for Dakota Jackson, it was like lunchtime, and I go to wash my hands, and I look up, and there's a mirror there at the sink. And I see myself, and I look, and I start smiling, and I say, I can't believe they're paying me to do this, because I have so much fun creating this stuff, right? I'll tell you that my biggest machine that I ever bought, I had to have it leased from the bank to buy it. And the bank manager, when I had an opening reception for my workshop, the bank manager who arranged the lease for me came, and I always remember him talking, and I was like shocked that he's there. What the hell, what's he doing here? But I was happy, right? The amount of people, including him, who said, man, I love working wood. When I go home, I have a garage, and I always do this and I do that, and I get to work with wood, and I enjoy it. So I can't wait to come to see your workshop. The great thing about it, when you talk about parents shying away and thinking their kids shouldn't do, that's not a good thing to have my kid do or whatever. It's not a practical thing. And if a kid loves it, it is so cool, because so many people talk about, man, I wish I was doing this. I would have loved to be able to do this, and you can make a living, somehow I've survived, I mean, my wife might think otherwise, we could have done, we could have had an island in the Caribbean, but I think they're all sold. I don't know. So that's my excuse, at least,
You're doing fantastic. You guys you're doing fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. I think now is a good time for us to take a break, so that you can have a sip of water or something. So let's take a quick break. For those of you joining us, we're with Jonathan Locke, who is our featured guest today, and he's sharing with us his life about being a furniture craftsman. Quite and exciting.
Router onto this piece so that we can use it as though it's a compass to swing it and create a perfect arc. What they were doing is that this shape, they glued these blocks on here, and it sits in here, but that's it. The problem with this is that, look at this here. That's no good. This has to be screwed properly, so this is dangerous. I'm surprised they would do this, but so what we need to do is to mark where the screws go. No, un momentito. For the tornilla, I want to take out this. Para pasarle el tornillo No, I want to take this out, the screw, the tornillo on the take out.
¿Y quieres que se quite eso? Porque está diciendo que el juego que tiene actualmente es hasta peligroso, que es mejor que esté a un lado.
Lay that down and I don't know exactly where the holes are.
Sí, este no puedo. Más grande y este, see this here is so worn.
Está tan gastado que tal vez no sirve.
Garbage.
Que por favor lo boten a la basura.
Because what you should say to him, this will ruin the screws.
Porque dañará los tornillos.
Give me me that. Where is it?
Devuélvalo un segundito.
Because not here, but maybe here.
Es que tú le-
This is for a square head. Right. Yeah. See, boy.
So, Jonathan,
Yes.
the clip we just saw shows you in the role of a teacher in Colombia, South America. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And it seems as though there's a problem with that machine.
Yes, definitely.
So it also means that you have to know your tools, your equipment, how they are made, and all of that from what I saw there.
Yes.
What was happening?
I'll tell you the first part is what was happening was my lack of Spanish was pathetic. That's what, because as you can see, I'm in Colombia. The female voice you heard was a translator, so they had to hire a translator to help me to communicate. But basically, I was teaching them, like, they would get the job where they're making a round table, and they would take a jigsaw and just draw with a pencil this circle, and then roughly cut out this circle, and then try to sand the edges to make it perfect. And what I was showing them was they eventually figured out that they could work like a compass and create this circle. So that machine needed to be screwed onto the arm of the compass. That machine was essentially like one of the points of the compass that would draw out the circle, but it would actually cut the wood to create a perfect circle. So I was showing them how to improve the quality of the circle that they were trying to create. Because when I looked at the finished product, the product was never a crisp, clean circle. You know, if you buy a coffee table and it's a circle, you expect to see a nice, pure circle. You don't expect to see a little bit of a flat edge at some spot and, you know, that your eyes can pick up something irregular. So, and that's what they were having. That's the kind of problem they were having because they didn't set it up properly. So what's in the background of that shot is about 4 woodworkers, and I was showing them, that was one of the things I was showing them, was how to make that process work more efficiently.
Okay. You say show, I say teach.
Yeah.
I'm forwarding
Yeah.
to your experience at Parsons School of Design in New York City, where you spent more than 10 years as a part-time faculty member.
Yes.
I'm saying that because I want to highlight that there is the teacher in you. Whether you accept it or not, there is the teacher in you. And I'm wondering, how has your experience in Colombia, South America, the place, helped you to become a more effective part-time faculty member at Parsons School of Design?
Well, they kind of happened simultaneously. I don't remember what happened before. Actually, well, yeah, Colombia happened before that. But ultimately, what it did was it allowed me to be more comfortable. Because, for example, in that factory there, when I walked in, I kid you not, I walked in with my client because my client was having furniture built there and brought up to America. But there were so many problems with the furniture when it came up here. He said, Jonathan, I want to hire you to come down and let's go and look at this factory and see what's wrong. Why is it not working? And I walked through the door, and I remember just outside the front door of the factory, I'm walking towards the door and I'm thinking, I have no idea what I'm going to meet on the inside, what I'm going to say, what makes me think I know any more than what they're doing in there, you know? And when the door opened, I'm still like, my head is spinning because I'm actually anxious as to, am I going to be able to do what this client thinks I can do? But the moment I walked in, I saw problems, I saw issues. The moment I walked in, they in a sense, from my perspective, they come across as common sense, but it's because I've been doing it for a while. So once I saw something that clearly there was a better way to handle this process, I would talk to the guys. And then I got more comfortable with discussing the issue. And to get them to appreciate what I was saying was also a challenge, because at first you could see them shaking their heads like, what is he talking about? He doesn't know what he's talking about. No, this is how we always do it. What is he talking about? But the mistake that they made was they didn't realize that I don't just talk about it, I can do it. So I actually picked up the tools and started doing stuff. And then all of a sudden they started looking at one another and they're doing this kind of thing. And before you know it, I had them eating out of my hands. So we got along like a house on fire. Let me tell you, it was great. You know, so it really gave me that confidence that there's things that I know about woodworking that, let's say, another person doesn't necessarily know. And I have the confidence to be able to get them to understand how they can make this thing work. And so when I got into teaching, that played out well for that.
Talk about how this played into your tenure as a part-time faculty member at Parsons School of Design.
Right. Well, at Parsons, it was funny because Tony Whitfield is the designer and Parsons faculty member. Actually, was the head of the department at the time. He was the one who talked me into coming, and it talked me for a couple of years. I'd done a few projects with him. I did a couple of homes for Wesley Snipes with him, and so we'd done some very complex details. And he was a really cool guy, so we got along really well. And he kept talking to me, I want you to come and teach. I want you to come and teach. And I'm like, teach? What do I know about teaching? You know, I don't have any qualifications to be a teacher. But I guess he saw something in me that I could teach. And so once I eventually, after a couple of years, I said, yes, okay, let me try it out for a semester. And let me tell you, teaching is exciting. And then I realized I was teaching all along. Like you said, I was teaching these guys in Colombia, in Ecuador, in Guyana, in my workshop, because, you know, the skills that I had, I knew a lot of tricks that I learned at Dakota Jackson, a lot of very unique tricks. And so guys would come to work for me and they would say, well, how are we going to make this? We can't do this. And I said, why don't you try this? And you said, oh, wow, okay, let me see. And so I developed this confidence to be able to talk to students who had never, and I can tell you, mostly girls in the class, they 19, 18, 19, they were sophomores at Parsons, the class I did, never picked up a drill in their life, never picked up any woodworking tools, but they want to be a designer. And so the class I taught was how to build the pieces they designed. And I was able to get them to build pieces that were as good as any woodworker could build. I mean, it was, when we saw it, as a matter of fact, okay, I'll confess this. One of the reasons I don't teach there is because I focus so much on the quality and the end result, the finessing of the end result, when they were more interested in the concept at Parsons. And so it became apparent to them that I wasn't quite the guy that they really wanted. It took them about 10 years to figure that out. So I was happy. You know, I mean, I still wish I could be teaching there now. Because the students loved it. They really got a kick out of it. Sometimes I bump into them and they would say, you know what, I really learned a lot of stuff from you.
So let me ask you this question. I'm putting you on the spot now. Would you say you're a perfectionist?
That's putting me on the spot, because I would argue that I'm not, but then I've been accused of that. But you know, the problem with this kind of stuff is you always know the flaws in your work. You know, you can't. So that's the sign of a perfectionist. You know every flaw, and you can't avoid having flaws. You know, this is a human producing something. You know, so I don't like that term. Sorry, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it.
Just before we take a break, this is a really good joke here, as you're shaking his hand. I don't like
it has a negative connotation. That's why I don't like it.
Really, it depends, because I'm thinking when you're looking at Jonathan's work, it's perfect.
Yeah, I do.
Let me put it differently. When Rose is looking at Jonathan's work, that we'll see some more of later on, I would say it's perfect from layman, you know. And I'm saying that to say it in a very serious way, that I know you really take pride in the work that you do, the work that you produce, because
Yes.
you're very cognizant that it's that Locke name that is being attached to it. So let's take a quick break and get you to wet your throat a bit, and then we'll come back and talk some more.
Okay.
For those of you joining us, thank you. You're watching Jonathan Locke here on Arts, Culture, and Things in Between. We are taking a quick break, and we'll be right back with Jonathan.
Cut it. Okay. Because I want to make sure that these joints are, like you see how this thing is open here, it's touching here, it's touching even here. It's not even like straight, it's a big open gap here. So I have to get I got to get all my whole stack perfectly parallel with clean straight cuts. And this is where we can go to the table saw, and I can do a little trick with the table saw to make that happen.
Do you come flat or bevel them? The cut?
Flat. They
Okay.
get cut perfectly clean, square.
Okay.
This edge is perfectly square to the surface, even though it's very thin.
Okay.
Right? So.
I wonder this one is.
No.
30 seconds?
There's like a 30 second. Like, or 16. It'll be somewhere between one to the other. I just want to write down these numbers. So, 6.
Imagine you do all your flat work, get it, and then you can veneer it.
3.
Oh my God.
Look real nice.
So good.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 7. So this way I ain't got to worry about it. So now I want to stack it back the way that the tree grew, which means all the numbers got to be up, right? It doesn't matter that they're in sequence anymore. Actually, you know what? Yeah, the number. The pencil is the original number, which is what I wrote on. So, and you can tell because you will see this V, this triangle of the sap. So that's what we just went through there just now, is just the decision-making process. Now we can get a little more to the more physical, more technical part that can be, we were dealing with the aesthetic part of the process. Now we get into where we all got to really hustle. So now we're going to, I want these things to stay together in the same position they're in right now. I want all of them together because I'm going to cut all of them at the same time.
Oh.
I hate masking tape.
Masking tape.
Yeah. No, not this one. I bought some. This mask, I like to use.
There, in the white bag. In the white bag. Look.
No. The roll I bought. It's in a plastic.
So, Jonathan,
Yes.
I heard the magic word twice at the top of that video, that clip. Perfectly flat, perfectly straight. And I was tickled. I think, what are the odds? We just come off a conversation talking about perfection, and then Jonathan drops the P word. And perfectly straight. So that clip we saw, you were actually in Guyana.
Yes.
In a teaching mode again.
Yes.
Right? So I'm saying all of that. I'm highlighting all of this to say, Jonathan, that all of these experiences really play into your entrepreneurship too.
Yes.
Right? You have been an entrepreneur for 29 years. The owner of Tamari Studios, where you employ many individuals. A big part of what you did was working internationally too. And we've just seen your work in Colombia. Then we saw work you did in Guyana. Now, my question is, how did you end up going to Guyana to work with this group of individuals? Or is this a project, a special project? What was going on?
Well, a close family friend, Jocelyn Doe, who has a factory in Plaisance called Liana Kane, she has always been interested in having me come down there and work with her. As a matter of fact, her company name actually had the word veneers as well as part of the name. because she'd always had an interest in veneers. And she and I kept in touch from before she even had the factory. She would say, Jonathan, I'm setting up this factory. I want you to come and run it. And I was like, you know, that's not in my wheelhouse at this point in time. I got another program where I'm working here or doing whatever. And anyway, she set up the factory, and, you know, we always corresponded. So she actually brought me down there several times. As a matter of fact, every time I go to Guyana, I stay at her place. And I can tell you, I thank her so much for that, because, you know, otherwise there would have been much fewer times that I've actually would have been in Guyana. But so I ended up going there and to her factory to work with the guys there. And I can tell you, it's hard to find something more pleasurable than to work with guys and show them tricks and get them to figure out stuff. And in this case, veneers is something that nobody in Guyana understands, knows about at all. So you really get to introduce a whole new concept of production of work. So that's how I ended up there. In Colombia and Ecuador, it's going with my client, helping the factory. As a matter of fact, the first time when I went to Colombia was to see what they could do. The factory owner realized that, wait, this guy knows a couple of things. So they then turned to me and said, you know, Jonathan, can we pay you to stay down for another week? Because, you know, we'd like you to show us some more things. But ultimately I was fortunate that I was through, in this case, one case, a client, actually a client business friend, actually. And then through, in Guyana, it was with Justin Dow, you know.
So what I'm also hearing from you, Jonathan, is the importance of collaboration in your line of business. Some people will call it networking, but what I'm hearing those things there, and especially as a businessman too, you really give back to your community, and as you're giving back to your community, you're obviously growing your business too, because you cannot do this alone. So let me ask you this other question regarding your business. What was your thrust behind Temeri Studios?
Well, I guess the reality is that once I decided I want to become a woodworker, a furniture maker, it never occurred to me anything other than having your own workshop. That was the only thought I had in mind. That's how you do it. That was my thinking. But once I actually got into woodworking school in England, but I couldn't afford it. And that's why I ended up coming to America. Well, that's the reason why I came to America. The reason I came to America was to get married to my wife. Now I've lost my train of thought here. No, hold on a sec. What was I talking about there?
Well, you started to talk about how the reason behind the business.
Right. So Temeri Studios, actually my father had Temeri Studios as his art studio. My mother had Temeri Studios in Guyana as her ceramic studio. So I said, you got to keep the name, at least you got to keep it in the family, you know. But once I got, I had to get a job first. I didn't have clients or anything like that. I didn't really have the work experience. But the moment I got a job working professionally, it was only a matter of time once I had developed enough skills and enough confidence to have my own shop. But it was a natural progression. You know, I never considered the thought of, I guess in Guyana, the thinking would be that, you know, if you had a workshop, you had your own workshop, you built stuff for people. And all of a sudden, after about a month of having my own place, I got a job that was too big for me to physically handle, and I had to hire someone to help me. And before you know it, I had to hire 2 people. And then it grew up to about 10 people, you know. And then at that point, it grew out of control because I'm more of an artist than I am a businessman, okay? Let's be honest here. But it was a natural progression for me to have my own place, you know. I think that comes from maybe, I don't know, seeing my mother operate, you know, and my father too. You know, as an artist, an artist tends to be someone who kind of does their own thing most of the time, you know. So
I'm going to ask you a real prying question now. And you'll have to get into a zone to answer it. I'm preparing you. And the question is, what kept you inspired to create? Now, we're not talking about the foundations that mom and dad laid. You're grown up now, and you're seeing a learning curve in your creations. Your creativity is being sparked different on a level that you've never, you're discovering a different Jonathan, the artist. What kept you inspired?
Can I tell you, that's an easy question. I'm sorry. Okay. It's an easy question because when you make a piece of furniture for a client and you see their eyes light up, and I mean, you see their eye. I have a photograph of 2 chairs. I have these 2 chairs I built for clients. I have a letter that these clients sent me after I delivered them. They said they have breakfast. This is an elderly couple. They have breakfast, and those chairs, they sit at that table after they finish eating for, they said, about an hour, just chatting away, this couple. They said those chairs are so beautiful, so comfortable. They've become a part of their lives. That's how they phrase, that's written in their handwriting. Let me tell you something. When you get people excited about something you do, that's your inspiration to go forward, to keep going. And I got that so often. And times I didn't even understand why someone would react to this. To me, it's like, what's the big deal? But people get excited about what you do, you'll keep going. It's a non-issue. It's a non-issue.
No, I'm crying still, Jonathan. I am jumping into your head some more.
Okay.
Because yes, I understand that people are getting excited. Right. They're loving your creativity. They're loving your work. They're loving your artistry. But you still have to do the creating. Yeah. That is the piece I'm talking about. I am sure that there are some unique pieces out there that are Jonathan Locke.
Yeah.
That is what I'm talking about. What inspires you to create those unique pieces that are Jonathan Locke's pieces? Aside from the fact that your clients really, truly embrace your artistry and they enjoy your work.
Well, I will say that there's a technical side to resolving issues and design issues. And so some of my favorite pieces are pieces where I had to figure out how to make it work. I remember one of the very first pieces you saw was a huge wall unit that you saw, and these have these big bifolding doors in the front of it. That's one of the first pieces you showed at the break. And that piece, I remember when the architect came to my studio to see it, because I said, you know, it's standing now, you could come and take a look at it. I remember him standing in the doorway of my shop looking at it, and he looked at me and he said, Jonathan, I didn't think you could make this. I didn't. I said, what do you mean? You gave me the job. You gave me a deposit. I had to build it. What are you talking about? But the challenge, I like the challenge of trying to solve the problem, to figure out how to make something work. And so I ended up, you know, but fortunately, people gave me lots of more challenging pieces. The simple pieces where you can make more money, they never gave me, so which was unfortunate. But there's nothing like having that challenge to get your juices flowing and say, man, I gotta make, and you wake up in the middle of the night, I know what to do, man. When I get to work tomorrow, I know it. And then the guys look at me and they say, oh yeah, that makes sense. Let's try it. You know, I mean, and today, I mean, this 2 days ago, you know, I was doing it, and I would use the term used in the Karate Kid, the term called grasshopper. I said, grasshopper, use your kidneys, which is my father's joke, you know, because they would even the seasoned guys sometimes, you know, I said, don't worry, I got more tricks to show you, you know, I mean, as a joke, you know, but it was sort of a serious joke because I would pull some tricks. And the truth is, I learn from my guys too all the time. So it goes both ways, you know.
Let me ask you this. What was the most challenging piece you've created?
It's a good question, because the lots of challenging pieces, and I relate them. It breaks down to, let's say, I usually break it down to what's the piece I love the most. In terms of challenging, um, it, it varies. Honestly, doing the coat of arms that I did for Guyana was it was done as a labor of love, thankfully, because I would have lost my shirt on it, you know. Um, but there was one amazing piece that they separated two rooms that had these very complex doors that hid curtains in there to create, and a bed that folds on a Murphy bed. But it involves some very complicated engineering. Honestly, that's one of my favorites. But there are lots of because each one has its challenges. There are quite a few that I got a kick out of.
So let me ask you another question regarding that folded bed and all of that. You said there was some engineering involved.
Yes.
You work with other professionals when you're doing a big project like the one you just hinted to? Or you do everything?
We do. It would be my shop. Let's say in that case, there was a whole apartment. By the way, that apartment got sold within months of us doing it. And the person who bought it because of the work we did. She was so in love with the work that we did in it. And it's funny, I was there, and that was many years ago. I was there 2 weeks ago, adjusting a door for her. And I'll do anything for her because someone buys a home because of the work I did. You're satisfying me. You make me feel good. I'm not sure how to take that answer further.
But you had a team, though. That's what you were saying in a nutshell. There's a team.
Yes, there's a team because it's my work. Okay, so that project would be my workshop, and I was sort of the head of the team, and then we'd have 4 or 5 guys or so producing the pieces. But we didn't collaborate with other woodworking shops. It would be us and the designer, or us and the architect would be on the project. So we would be the fabricators. So they relied on me to figure out how to solve these problems. And what I'd want to add to that is that my problem solving kind of skills got developed from my mother's problems. So I always channel her when I'm doing this, because that's what she did. As you were talking about the influence that they had on me. That was one of my main things, that my mother solving the problems of creating this swimming pool with tiles made in Guyana. No one has ever made tiles in Guyana, ever. She created the tiles and the glaze. When you see a blue tile, it's clay underneath and then the blue glaze that's fired in a kiln. All of those products came from different parts of Guyana. She traveled around the country finding special chemicals in the earth, came to Georgetown with this stuff and did tests and was able to figure out the best way to do it. It is the most unique swimming pool maybe in the world, that pool in Guyana, which I've never been able to swim in as yet, by the way. Still upset with that.
And where is that again? For those
the former President Burnham's home, the residence on Vicinjon Road.
Okay. Yeah. So let's take a quick break, Jonathan.
Okay.
Good stuff here. Good stuff, man. I'm learning. I may come challenge you. I may pick up a drill.
There you go.
For those of you who joined us late, you are with us here in Arts, Culture, and Things in Between. And I'm sitting with Jonathan Locke, who is an artist and by trade, furniture craftsman. We'll take a break now.
From Guyana to New York. So the first part of the story is you need a pointer broom, right? You need a pointer, which is part of the branch from a coconut tree. And what's important to note that your parents are never happy at Easter time, because the pointer broom keeps getting smaller and smaller as we get closer to Easter. Because you make kites, you don't make one kite in Easter day, you make kites every day until Easter Day from maybe a month before Easter. And for each kite, you need about 3 pointers. So the other thing you want to look at is the nice fat pointers, like this one here. Let me see this one here. Yeah, it's too skinny and weak, right? So we're not interested in that. So we look for something high. See the difference there? So you want to get 2 main ones, because for most kites, the 2 main designs we have, one makes a sound, a buzzing sound, that you guys might remember that. And then another one just flies in the sky and it's pretty lame. So as a kid, you want the one that buzzes. So what you do is you have like an X with a crossbar in the middle, and then on the top is going to have this curved piece, which in that case, for the skinny wimpy looking one, is perfect for the curved bar because it can bend quite easily. Okay, so if you want to make a simple flat kite, you would just do an X, and maybe with a cross piece, or you can just do an X and it'll be a rectangular shaped kite. All right, so
now, does the cross bear any relation to the Bible or any biblical
no,
relationship there?
Actually, as we say it in Guyana, the biblical concept is the idea of a kite symbolizing Jesus ascending into heaven. So that kite going up into the sky is symbolic in that way. And what we do is we actually, on the string, as the string is flying the kite, we actually get a little piece of paper, tear a hole in it, and get it into the middle of the string, get the string through that hole. And the breeze pushes that piece of paper up to the top to where the kite is up here. And we say we're sending a message to God. So we never wrote any message on there, but in our heads, that was what it was. So I'll show you, I'll get started here so that you guys can follow right along behind me. And again, you can modify your design as you see fit. Now, one of the things that we know from experience is if the kite is too big, let's say we make a big X like this, it's going to be too flexible, right? So the breeze is going to make this kite bend and break. So you want some nice sturdy pieces, and then depending on the strength of the pointer, which are called pointers, depending on the strength, that will determine what size kite you can make. So,
and symmetry is going to be very important with the loop, right?
Symmetry is going to be very important with the loop, exactly. And my knot didn't work just now, it slipped off. I tell you, my eyes are no longer the age they used to be when I was making kites.
I don't like being touched. It's like it's not that hard.
I'm doing my two half hitches here. We didn't call it that, we just said we're tying it. Okay. So now that's tied. I'm gonna cut it off here, the excess. Okay. So now, if you take this off the pin, now I have this loop, right? But you can't fly the kite just like that. So what you're gonna do, we're gonna continue to make the loop by punching a hole in the mouth of this mouse, right?
Pokemon.
But I'm gonna punch a hole. You see the X that the first 2 frame pieces make here, there's 2 longer pieces, in the bottom X, the bottom V of the X, right? I'm going to punch a hole and then get the thread through that hole.
I saw scooters,
Yes, yes.
and that looked like a very special project. It's nothing like the scooters I know we would see in the Caribbean, in Guyana, in our regions. That's too fancy. Too fancy a scooter.
Right.
Why did you make the scooters? What was the reason for making the scooters?
I'm sorry that you picked up on how neat those things looked, because as a small boy in Guyana, you know, you would never have I had a full workshop at my disposal. So what do you expect me to do? It's going to be neat and the edges are going to be straight, you know? Yes. I mean, half the time you're using a cutlass to kind of like chop out the V for where the wheels go or something, you know? But that was a lot of fun. And I did that with my son, who would have been about 9 or so at the time. So I remember teaching him how to use a drill properly when we were doing it, which again, you never drill screws in. It's a nail with a hammer, not even with a hammer when you're putting it together. The wood would split and all kinds of craziness. But those scooters were made for actually the Guyana Folk Festival Fun Day. several years ago, and they were talking about the theme was, I think, um, got nostalgic toys or things that we did, games or something like that. And so I made 5 scooters or 5 or 6 or whatever with my son, and we took them there because they were going to have like races and different things. And let me tell you, the best part of that, I gotta tell you, was that, you know, in America at that time, the Razor, which is a brand name for a scooter, one you could buy at Toys R Us or wherever, was the big rage. All kids had one. So at this fun day, some kid came with one of the Razors. All kids would always have them randomly around. That kid dropped his own so fast when he saw mine, so fast. You never saw him pick up his again. He was on mine all afternoon, and other kids were taking turns on them and stuff like that. It was, I mean, it was perfect because it you saw kids relate to something that was you could, it didn't come out of a store. They responded to it so differently, you know. But we grew up with that, you know, and I was like, wow, these kids miss out on so much, you know, because I didn't tell him, you know, try it and see if you like it. No, he came right off. What's that? What's that? He just dropped his, you know, like a hot potato and picked it up, you know. So it was made for the folk festival. And then it was great because, you know, I'm an adult now. So I left all the scooters with the kids, you know, so they were able to take them home. I was like, yeah, you know, I won one for the kids kind of thing.
So take away though from that story, again, I'm highlighting, I'm putting a bullet point, that is, that here's the teacher in you again.
Yeah.
Because you not only made the purpose of making the scooters was not just for GCA,
right,
but your son also learned from the process of you teaching him about not only how to make scooters, but also how to use the tools to make the scooters.
Yes, yes.
The other part of that clip we saw was good old kite making.
Oh, well, yes, yes, yes.
And that was a very lengthy process in terms of you being the P word. And those of you who've been with us all afternoon, you know what the P word is. Those of you who are just joining us, the P word is the perfectionist. But what I like about that particular clip, Jonathan, was that you were speaking to the other part of the name of this show. You know, arts, culture. The cultural piece is passing down knowledge, passing down experiences, things in between. The things in between, the critical piece was family gathering.
Right, right.
So what resonated with me was that you were really passing down knowledge to those around you. Now, I want to ask you, what is a reason that you thought or that you found that was important to spending time teaching those around you, specifically about kite making?
Okay. Well, it's not just about kite making. You know me a little bit, right? If you can say one thing about me, I'm all about Guyana. I'm all about my childhood. The life I had growing up in Guyana was so special. You couldn't. It was just so special. And kite making was one of the many things that I did as a kid that I thoroughly enjoyed. And I've discovered that kids, like with the scooter, kids respond to these things because you just go into the store and you buy it and you go and you fly it, or you buy it and you ride it. And the process of how it happens, how it comes together, is completely lost. But they really enjoy experiencing that process when you put it to them. And I've discovered that over the time when because I always enjoyed it, I guess. And so I always wish that my kids and that was my niece and nephew, that they could experience the childhood that I had. Now, I guess I know it's not realistic. They live in a different world with computers and things like that. But when they get to put that down, they realize, and they get to pick up something like creating creating something like that, and then you put it in a string and the wind blows and it goes up in the air and it makes a buzzing sound. It's an excitement. It's an excitement that you can't buy in a store. You just can't, you know. So I actually did a workshop with the Guyana Cultural Association last summer with about 15, 20 kids or so, teaching them how to make kites. And they were excited, let me tell you. It was fun. It was chaos, but that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I loved every second of it. And I said, you know, and so this year when we've got coronavirus issues, I'm very disappointed because I was looking forward to building on my experience with last year, you know.
So did you use the pointer broom for the workshop with the children of Guyana?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
You did. Now, the pointer broom
Yes.
is unique to Guyana.
Yes.
And there are many creatives who use the pointer broom to create wall furnishings and the like.
Yes.
Have you ever done any work with the inclusion of the pointer broom? If not, I challenge you there.
Now you got me thinking. I off the top of my head, I can't think that I've done so. But you know, the reality is that I have used those. You see, that's the other thing. Working with these things as a kid, I use those ideas as an adult, as a professional, to create stuff, to figure out how to solve problems. How do I determine how much, what's the perimeter of a shape that I've got to buy enough material to wrap around this thing? It's the same as that string. How much thread do I need? I got a spool of thread. I only got a little bit, you know. So, but I can't say that I have actually used. I haven't done, and I'll think about that. I'll think about that because it could be interesting. It could be interesting.
So I'm pushing your envelope some more. I'm pushing some more.
I'm hearing you.
What could you create?
Well, you know, one of the things that I've always one of the things I've always wanted to do was to do kind of like floats, like Mashramani floats in Guyana. I've helped one time because one of the more prominent float designers for the Mashramani float parade lived on my street in South Ramveld, and the week before the parade, he would have a whole team of people working through the night, and I would go and help as a kid. I've always been interested in creating costumes and things like that as just something to, you know, get your creative juices flowing, sort of. So I could picture that sort of stuff almost like creating like a headdress for someone, you know, so these pointers are kind of sticking out, but then they're connected by whatever threads, and then maybe you have, you know, tassels attached to them, and the breeze makes them, you know, there are things you can do that, you know, that, you know, I would certainly be considering thinking of stuff like that. Sure.
Well, you know what I'm thinking about, and I'm not going to charge you for my crazy idea.
Mm-hmm.
I can actually see pieces of the pointer,
Yes,
laid on your veneer. You hear me using your terms, veneer.
yes, I'm impressed.
Learn about veneers. No, seriously. I'm talking about that in that way, to maybe help with designing of a particular wood, because I can see it happening, you know, with your expertise. I really think that the pointer broom can be used.
Right. Well, in actual fact, I'm just, you see, it's funny, this topic comes up, and I'm trying to remember if I've ever done it, but I've played with like lampshades, working with veneers, weaving them in and out. And you could imagine the pointers being part of that structure. Okay. You know, as a kid, I've always done things with my hands. So I've done knitting, sewing, and weaving is another thing. One Christmas, we grew up, both parents were our teachers at the time, and there wasn't a lot of money around. And I remember my Christmas gift was a weaving loom, which is this long piece of metal that has these slots in it, so the string goes through, so that you can move it up and down and weave fabric. And that was and it was a used one that my mother had sanded down and painted. That was my Christmas gift. And I remember today it was very special, very special, you know. Just another way of surviving when there's not a lot of money around to go buy kids gifts, you know.
Look at you now, because it really, it was a part of your preparation for who you are today.
Yes.
It really was, because you're sitting here bragging. You can weave, you can knit.
Yeah.
Some men don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
No, really. To pick
Yeah.
up a needle, you know, to weave a basket, or to know how to weave. I mean, it's a really unique experience for a boy
Right.
back then to be exposed to, because there were a lot of gender roles that were pushed, considering how we were raised in this colonial era and all of that stuff. We're not going to go there now, but
Right.
you know, it's humble beginnings that really were impactful.
Yeah. No, I've woven in England. My English grandmother, we would spend summers by her, and I've woven baskets. You bring the word basket up, and I know it's coming to my memory again that I've woven baskets. She actually taught me some of this stuff, and knitting. I remember knitting a dress for my sister's doll. I bet she doesn't remember that, but no, I've done a lot of that kind of stuff in this household here. For many years, I'm known as the person who did all the sewing. If this hem has to be done, I'm the one who would do it. You know, by the way, so for those who don't know, Bishop's High School used to be a girls' school, and we were the first batch of boys who went there. And they had this traditional home economic program where they have cooking and sewing. And because I'm a work with my hands kind of guy, I was one of the best at cooking and one of the best at sewing. And I learned how to sew my own clothes, so that I remember I had to go to a party one night and I didn't have a shirt. I literally took an old shirt. I went downtown, I bought some denim, and I used the old shirt as a pattern, and I sewed my own, and I wore the shirt to the party. And I must have been 16, 15, 16. And I guarantee you, no one knew that I made that shirt. I never did it before in my life before, you know, but I didn't have the money to buy a new shirt. Money was pretty scarce, you know. What can I tell you?
But creativity helped.
Creativity was not scarce.
There you go.
Not scarce, you know, and I wasn't afraid of and you didn't realize it. You were just doing it, you know. It was solving a problem that you had in front of you. Yeah.
Let's take a break, Jonathan. This is really good stuff. I'm enjoying this. Let's take a break. For those of you who've joined us late, I'm sitting with Jonathan Locke, who is our artist being featured today, a furniture craftsman. Let's take a break. So I am so excited with what we just saw. So excited about what you just saw. And you laugh because you know why, Jonathan. I am happy to see that the last photograph was you being awarded by the Guyana Cultural Association for your great work. I do believe that charity begins at home. So it was great to see that and know that you were honored by our Guyanese brothers and sisters and an organization that upholds Guyanese arts and culture here in the United States. Yes, you've gotten other awards, right? You've gotten recognition from the Institute, the American Institute of Architects for Craftsmanship twice, and also from the International Contemporary Furniture Fair. So in a nutshell, these recognitions have to do with your community work. You have and you continue to engage in community work. But I would like to focus on what I consider to be highlights of your creations that complement your community work. And we just saw a couple of them. These two masterpieces created for Guyana are the flag of Guyana and the coat of arms. Now, I know that you had donated the flag of Guyana to the consulate, the Guyana consulate here in New York.
Yes. And
I know that you had presented the coat of arms to the Honorable David Granger, who's the president of Guyana, for Guyana's 50th independence, right? Anniversary. And I mean, this is exciting stuff, Jonathan, for me. I don't care about anybody else right now. I'll be selfish. You know, I really believe that these are the best pieces that you have made to date. What propelled you to create them?
It's very simple. I really am all about Guyana. It's as simple as that. And sometimes I feel uncomfortable saying that if I'm an American company, because I don't want them to feel like I'm just here mooching off of America as such at all. Because what I do is here, but I can't express. It's funny. I always think my sister understands how I feel about Guyana in a way that makes me realize somebody gets me. You know, I always am amazed that people love Guyana as much as I do. And I was like, wait, no, I'm the one who loves Guyana the most, you know? So all I do, so much I do is all about thanking Guyana for whatever I've been able to become and to be able to do. So, I mean, the coat of arms, which, yeah, it was one of my most unique pieces. I was working under my buddy Andre Greaves, whose father, Stanley Greaves, the artist, was actually one of the original artists who helped create the original coat of arms. So it's kind of funny that it's sort of poetic that he was actually around me when I was working on this piece, and you know, I would work on it in lots of evenings. It took several years, quite frankly, over time to do it. It was a process, but I can only say that Guyana I get very emotional about Guyana. Let me tell you, one trip back to Guyana, I made some furniture, and I may deviate a little bit here, and I made this furniture in the furniture factory, one of the furniture factories in Guyana, and we presented it at Cara Lodge. Some people came to see it and to hear me talk about what I was doing, and I had it covered over in this blanket sort of. And then I'm standing talking, you know, about what I'm doing and why I'm here. And I'm looking at the audience, and all of a sudden I see there's people I remember from when I was a little kid. Oh my God, there's Auntie so-and-so, there's Uncle so-and-so. And I can tell you, I had such a struggle not to cry in front of all these people, because it was my dream come true to be able to come back and do something and teach a whole factory of guys. This is a separate factory from her factory, mind you. I just remembered this is another factory. But to show these and to get these guys, you should see them how excited they got when I showed them some techniques. I mean, it was, you can't get any better. Life can't be better. It can't be more rewarding than to show somebody how to do something better for themselves, you know. And so, and to be able to do it at home. I mean, I've tried to have a full Guyanese workshop here in New York, Guyanese employees. It's always been a struggle because, you know, there are lots of other people here too. But I've always had one or two Guyanese guys around me, you know, because I always say, man, you know what? We offer America so much stuff. So much great people are here from Guyana. And I always try to shout it to the mountaintops, from the mountaintops here. So the inspiration is that, you know, I love Guyana. Simple.
I'm going to do one of those jump into your heads question right now. I'm preparing you.
Okay.
I am thinking with the intricate look, the intricate design of especially the coat of arms, layering the different types of wood, the different pieces of wood, veneers, materials, what's going on there in that creation?
Well, I like that question because, you know, okay, I bring up this name Stanley Greaves again. He once was sitting down, him and I were talking, and he was describing some of his work that he had produced. And he's saying, yeah, you know, I thought I would do this here, and I thought I would add this line here, or this color here, or this ball over here. And I'm like, makes it sound like it's just anybody could just do it. But if you try to do it, it ain't gonna work, right? So if you look at the coat of arms, for example, they're the two jaguars. I specifically chose the type of wood to kind of pick up that look of a jaguar, which kind of like, you know, the fur on the jaguar with the spots or whatever. You know, I tried to select woods that brought out the element that it was trying to represent. And so it wasn't sort of random. It wasn't just because, you know, they don't have the same colors, but clearly you can really get the feel for what, for example, on the headdress, the feathers were made, I think, with ash veneer, with these very straight lines, just like a feather would have just these straight lines kind of detail. So there was a lot of thought going into before I even started making it, selecting. So I have this big drawn out image of the coat of arms, and I would have all these choices of woods, and I would put a little piece over there just to stick them on a pin to hold them and say, okay, I think this is good. This is the right choice for that. So there was a whole process there, you know. And by the way, one of the things, unfortunately, is that there's no Guyanese woods in that thing. None. And as we know, Guyana's in the middle of the rainforest, right? It's one of my not only pet peeves, but one of my dreams is to get a veneer industry going in Guyana, you know, because the species of wood we got in Guyana, you can't beat. You just can't beat, you know. So one of the things, I mean, I've been to their plywood factory and talked with the guys there, but, you know, it's different machinery that creates these type of veneers. So, but
okay. Yeah. So here my challenging question now. Yeah. What's the reason that we cannot use the woods in Guyana to do a coat of arms?
I would say, honestly, the reason is the lack of, well, I forgot what the word, not inspiration, but it requires someone there saying, pushing the idea of it, and someone who could get people to appreciate what it could mean for Guyana, for the timber industry. You know, I have met with people down there, but I've never been able, I've had meetings down there trying to get people to recognize it, but I guess they weren't quite the right people that I was dealing with, you know. And, you know, it's difficult for a third world country to say, you know, invest in something like that when they can sell a log for the boardwalk of Coney Island here quite easy. You cut the tree down, you make these big chunks, and you say, here you go, America, there's your piece of the wood. Or for sleepers for a train, train track, it's easy to just make these big logs, and it's quick money. For veneers, it requires more equipment, it's more involved process. But I keep arguing. I mean, there's a whole argument behind it that you get way more dollars value for your money, for your effort, by creating veneers. You get to save the rainforest by tons. I mean, it's amazing how much conservation stuff. That's what the beauty of working with veneers is, that imagine this board, one board of wood could make 32 pieces of veneer. So what you see is a board that's a foot wide. It's 32 feet of surface area that you could cover with that one board. So you have multiplied that board by 32 times. Literally, that's what it means. So that you sell a board for $5 a square foot, but the veneer sells for $3 a square foot. But now you've got 32 times 3, because the thickness of the board is this 1 inch thick. But if you get 32 slices in that 1 inch thick, you've now multiplied that by 32 times. So, I'm hoping, that we can start to really get a conversation going more seriously about it.
I'm hoping so too, especially now with the consciousness of echo.
Yes, absolutely.
I really hope that you do not give up, given your expertise, given your knowledge, because we need folks like Jonathan Locke at the front of the line with the bullhorn, just resounding that message, because I get you with what you're saying in terms of Guyana being known for all of these exotic woods. But then where is that taking us in terms of amping it up? Amping up the visibility of Guyana in terms of how differently woods can be manufactured.
Right.
I get it. So I really hope that you don't lose your enthusiasm.
I want to tell you that I think that, I know that Guyana is going through some really difficult moments right now, and I'm going to more specifically not talk about politics, but talk about the coronavirus issue, where the price of oil has dropped so much. But what my expectation is that when Guyana does eventually see an excess set of dollars from oil, that they could then say, you know what? We could engage in a conversation about a $2 million US dollars worth of machinery to create a veneer manufacturing operation. And then all of a sudden, because now you've got money to diversify, which is exactly what Guyana needs, and it's amazing because the rest of the world does it all the time. But we have never had, so when I've talked to them, people will say, oh, it sounds good. But in the back of their mind, they're saying, but we ain't got 2 tins to knock together, so what can we do? We like the idea, but we can't take it anywhere. But now they legitimately, the price of oil will go back up, we can assume. They legitimately could engage in these conversations. So when one of the photographs with me with the president, when I was given, that was one of the conversations I had. And that's when he had talked to me about, he said that one of his ministers was actually going to be in New York, and that if I should meet with him to discuss it further. I tried, but that didn't happen. But I won't give up. Not at all.
In terms of not giving up, and I'm looking at the time, we have 10 more minutes, so I'm just letting you know that we're about to wrap up. But I am wondering if with the coat of arms, I'm thinking it's just that one that's alive. Am I correct?
Yes.
Just
It's
one.
one of a kind. It's one.
In the world.
Yes, for sure.
In perspective, Jonathan, in the world, right? It's one. You've started a new project that I'm aware of with the flags.
Right.
Now, I'm wondering if with this new project with the flags, if that being a lighter project in highlighting country pride and getting a few in the country, in the true sense of the word, on the ground.
Right.
If maybe it will get some visibility
and people in places begin to understand the importance of what you have been trying to get them to hear and to follow up on and do something about for ages. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I you know, going back to Guyana, one of my last trips, and you saw me in the factory talking to the guys about the veneers and showing them how to work with veneers. Um, the coat of arms and the flag that I did at the consulate, and I actually have some flags here right now that is one of my new projects. And I even ventured, I jumped around. Let me see. I happen to have them right here.
Yes, good. Could
This here, so this is what, I don't know if you can see that, yeah. So this is one of the pieces here, one of the flags. So again,
excuse me, sir. That one you said has Rose October's name on it? Yes.
I think somewhere, yeah. Oh wow, how did that happen? I'm not sure. But yes, the truth is that part of the coat of arms, the game plan with the coat of arms, was to have this conversation. It was supposed to be set up at the airport, welcoming as one of the welcoming Guyanese symbols for people coming into the country. But part of it was to start this conversation about working with veneers. And so I even said, you know, Guyana's also got to start thinking about the Caribbean too. So it's not just about Guyana, but even, you see, these kind of products here can be produced in Guyana. But you know, and using Guyanese woods, because everybody wants to say, oh, can you make a Burbage chair? I got that question so many times, you know. But the working with Guyanese veneers, you know, there's another sample here. This is the Trinidadian flag. But if I kind of zoom in, I mean, if you look at this wood here, I mean, that's a tree that grew looking like that. I mean, it's crazy how beautiful and amazing and unique these patterns are, you know, and Guyana has them all, you know. So no, I definitely would like to, it is something that I talk about, you know, people in Guyana have heard me already, and it's something that every time I go back, I always bring up the conversation. But with this change with oil, I legitimately feel that people are going to be willing to entertain the conversation more, you know. So yeah.
Just showed us the Ghana flag, a Trinidadian flag, and a Jamaican flag.
Yes.
Are you challenging yourself to do the Caribbean places? The CARICOM
countries, yeah. Well, okay, so in the last year and a half, I've officially closed Timeri Studios. And now I work with one of my clients, the same client, Ruben Bibi, actually, who took me to Colombia and Ecuador. I now manage his assembly plant, where we do wooden and metal works, actually related to windows and curtains. But we get more involved because of my woodworking background. We have actually taken on projects where we're actually doing wooden elements, which has been good for me because it keeps me still playing with wood. But it allows me the mental space then to work on side things like these flags, so that I can actually work on more kind of custom, unique type things that I personally wanted to work with. So that I'm actually going to take you up on the idea of getting more of that kind of stuff to Guyana, which I hadn't actually officially thought of, so that I can start to spread the word and explain what they're actually looking at. Because part of the problem is that people look at that and they don't know what they're seeing. Because like you're saying, what is a veneer? You know, people don't really, you know, before I started dealing with veneers, I didn't know what it was. I know what plywood is, but I don't recognize it as something that I can manipulate and create these interesting things. You know, like for example, conference tables where the center of the conference table has the logo of Banks DIH kind of thing out of veneers. I mean, it'll be so unique, and you could do that. You know, I've done stuff like that.
And I'm also wondering too, Jonathan, with the flags that you're making, there will be an international market out of Guyana for it. I don't know if that makes sense, because now with the oil find and so many different countries, representatives from different countries around the world going into Guyana, I think it would be a really huge deal a big deal, a prideful moment to have the flags that you're making actually underground in Guyana. And you know how our Guyanese folks are very, very creative. I wouldn't be surprised, Jonathan, if there is a person or some individuals who are who might be thinking of making the flag,
Right.
with whatever wood there is.
Right. Right. So, by the way, working with these veneers, the inspiration officially came from the museum in Guyana. There was a piece, and I can't remember what it was. This is the sad part. I haven't been back there. It's when I was a kid. It's like marquetry, but made with thick chunks of wood because we didn't have veneers back then. And it was one of the pieces. It might have been a map of Guyana. I don't think so. But it was made of lots of little pieces kind of glued together. But because it was thick chunks, they were all kind of cracking and opening up and things like that. Whereas this is where the kind of perfectionist side of me kicks in with the veneers. There's some things you can't compromise on. And so I make a big effort in making sure all these joints work just right and that kind of stuff. And with veneers, you can really finesse that kind of stuff. You know, so absolutely there's an opportunity for all kinds of stuff to create for export, which is my pet peeve growing up. And I'll say when people were buying and selling when in the early 80s and late 70s, and they're bringing in stuff from America and selling it. And all I kept thinking of, all this means is that Guyana loses out. It's money leaving the country. We should be producing products in Guyana and exporting them and bringing in dollars so that someone producing stuff like this, you know, you could create a substantial market that this is just the beginning of, you know. There's lots of stuff that can be done.
Well, I'm hearing you say that there is a whole new project out there for you, Jonathan. No pressure.
I'm good. No pressure. No pressure at all.
Pressure, but definitely not me. I can't do it. So it would have to be you. You know, I think this is the kind of response you give. Why not me? You know,
Right.
and that's you, Jonathan, saying it. Why
That's
not me? Given your passion for country love, given your passion for teaching, given your passion for creativity, given your passion for giving back. You know, I really want to thank you for allowing us to see the different sides of Jonathan Locke. I know you came on here and you're thinking, oh, we'll just shoot the breeze and talk about the work that I've done. And what I find is that when I sit with guests, they're forced to sit on spot and really hear about themselves and speak about themselves and in some ways wonder, did I really do all of this?
I've been down that road for the last half an hour or so. Yes.
Yeah, did I really do all of this? And I think that's where the passion is, Jonathan, because you do what you do out of love.
Yeah.
And you don't stop to think about what you're doing. All you know is that you love what you're doing. There's a passion burning inside you to create something else and to give back and feel good as you're doing it, because it's your career that you love and it does not feel like a career. And that's the best gift that we can get. So as my guest, Jonathan, I want to say thank you. But before I allow you to say goodbye, any words of parting? We're on the button of 5. If you can give us a couple of parting words before I tell our viewership, thank you.
Well, I think that apart from doing what you love to do, you know, we keep hearing that sort of stuff is really important. But I actually think that integrity, you know, honesty and that kind of stuff is a major part of it. You know, people don't trust you. They won't give you. I remember the first time a bank manager gave me a $5,000 check to build something for him. And I was looking at him and he's trusting me. And I'm like, but you never met me before. You handed me this check. And he was the head of Deutsche Bank and handing me this check. And I said, because I'd been dealing with his wife, he didn't know what I looked like. So I say that integrity is real critical. And then you can do whatever you want to do once you got that. So that's what I'm thinking.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. To our viewership, thank you for joining us. We've just sat through talking with Jonathan Locke, who is a furniture craftsman by artistry And we have learned so much from him this afternoon. And I want to thank him. Jonathan, thank you very much. Most importantly, this show would not have happened without our good old Raul De Silva, who is our tech engineer on the background in making all of this work seamlessly. Raul is the person who spearheads DEPros.com. That's his company. And Raul, from my heart to your heart, I appreciate you and I thank you for all that you do. On that note, I would like to say thanks to Jonathan again, and thanks to you, viewership, for joining us at Arts, Culture, and Things in Between today. Bye-bye, everyone.